Book Boys.
Book Boys!
Number 3.
Number 3.
It's late November. It's chilly.
It's very chilly. We had some snow already.
We did,
which melted. And now we're in this kind of depressing, cold,
grey,
perfectly set scene for Notes from the Underground.
Yes.
By Fyodor Dostoevsky.
Written in 1864. And
continuing with the existentialist theme. And one of the first existentialist works, apparently.
It's quite a short one. It's like, I think it classes as a short story. It could take a couple of hours to read, probably maximum. But it's not an easy read, I'd say.
No, it's not.
It's not like written for the convenience of the reader in any way. I guess we will give a little introduction of like what exactly this book is, a little kind of summary of what happens in the story, and then we'll just get into it and talk about it.
So there's 2 parts, right?
Yes.
The first part is the protagonist, the narrator, kind of after the actual events of the story, just writing his like memoirs, telling about himself, what kind of person he is. I guess also why he's writing this. And then part 2 is a bit longer, and it's the actual. Well, it's like taking an episode from his life, basically.
Yeah. And it's written as a kind of confession. So the writings of a fictional narrator, basically. Yeah. That's how this book is structured, or how this book is what it is, right? And it's incredibly rambling. It's incredibly like loose and kind of there's no kind of, how do I say, broader kind of thing that is pointing towards a broader kind of like, this is what I'm writing about kind of thing. It is, and it's also admitted by the narrator himself as kind of rambling.
And also the last sentence of the book, I think, was like an even higher meta level narrator being like, I'm sure this fellow could go on about his memoirs forever, and he did.
Yes.
But we're just gonna stop here.
We'll definitely get into that. So here's a quote from the foreword to the edition that I have, which is written by one of the translators, who is called Richard Pever, or Pevier, I think he's French. It says, "The Underground Man's book is a personal outpouring, harsh, self-accusatory, defiant, negligently written, loosely structured, a long diatribe, followed by some avowedly random recollections. Brackets, quote, I will not introduce any order or any system. Whatever I recall, I will write it down. Close quotes, close brackets. It claims to be genuine, if artistically crude. Quote, no longer literature, but corrective punishment, the narrator finally decides. Nietzsche thought he could hear, quote, the voice of blood in it." Another, I guess, to bring this into the context of what we've been reading, this book came before Nietzsche's writing, and I suppose influenced him quite a bit.
Incredibly dark.
Yeah.
Very depressing. Not a good time.
No, it kind of honestly kind of weighed on me as I was reading it.
Yeah.
I started with a lot of enthusiasm. I was really, really excited to read it. But there were times where I was like, I kind of don't want to pick it up.
Yeah. For the last 2 hours, we've been basically sitting on your couch, just in silence, staring at these depressing words.
Yeah, finishing off. So I guess, as Phil said, the first section is kind of a reflection, and I think as well it sort of is also a kind of like a manifesto on this guy's where he is and how he thinks about things.
Right. So what? Tell us, Nick. What kind of guy is this guy?
Oh Jesus! This guy is incredibly unreliable.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. Like, he will write a whole paragraph stating one thing, and in the following paragraph tell you, the reader, everything I told you was just a lie.
Yeah.
It's because of that, it's like very difficult to tease out what this guy really is. But I think that might also be maybe beside the point.
So, in my version of the book, which is a very old version from our university library, he keeps describing himself as spiteful. And I would indeed agree that he's a very spiteful character. But in your version of the book, the word used is wicked.
Yeah. So this is something that is kind of important to address, I think, and we were kind of interested in. We should debate about this, I think. The first words of this book go as follows: I am a sick man, I am a wicked man, an unattractive man, I think my liver hurts, ... That's in my edition. In Phil's edition, it begins with I am a sick man, I am a spiteful man.
Yeah.
And this was actually addressed in my translated version, and I'll just give you I'll just read the section. There is, however, one tradition of mistranslation attached to Notes from Underground that raises something more than a question of, quote, mere tone. The second sentence of the book, which is in Russian, I don't know how to pronounce, has most often been rendered as, quote, I am a spiteful man. I can't actually read this as I'm reading the Russian. Zloy, which is indeed at the root of the Russian word for spiteful, but it is a much broader and deeper word meaning wicked, bad, evil. The wicked witch in Russian folk tales is Zlaya Vedma, Zlaya being the feminine of Zloy. The opposite of Zloy is Dobry, good as in good fairy. This opposition is of great importance. My hands are sweating. This opposition is of great importance for Notes from Underground. Indeed, it frames the book from I am a wicked man at the start of the outburst, close to the end. They won't let me ... I can't be ... good. We can talk forever about the inevitable loss of nuances in translation from Russian to English, or from any language into any other. But the translation of Zloy as spiteful instead of wicked is not inevitable, nor is it a matter of nuance. It speaks for that habit of substituting the psychological for the moral, of interpreting a spiritual connection as a kind of behaviour which has so bedeviled our century, not least in its efforts to understand Dostoevsky. Besides, wicked has the lucky gift of picking up the internal rhyme in the first two sentences of the original. And
it's not just this sentence. Like throughout the book, he keeps referring to himself as spiteful, or I guess in your version, wicked. So this is kind of a core thing. And we can debate which one is more appropriate later. What kind of things do we find out about this man? What kind of episodes does he tell us that would qualify him as wicked or spiteful?
So, we have a couple of significant scenes from chapter 2. And chapter 2 is where we have an actual kind of story forming.
Yeah.
There is a time, for example, where he is embarrassed by an officer, or he's insulted by an officer in a bar, I think it is, and he concocts this really, premeditated way of getting back at him.
Yeah.
By basically just attempting to bump into him in the street, effectively, but he goes around it in such a weirdly calculated way. There's another time where he has dinner with some of his old school, I don't say school friends, but people he went to school with.
Yeah.
Which is probably the most dramatic part, section in the whole book, where he is just insanely unbearable. just like just like it's a nightmare essentially. It's just
What
an
is
absolute
so
nightmare.
unbearable about his way of acting?
Well, let's describe the situation a bit more, shall we? So I think it's before their dinner. He either bumps into them or sees them in some place.
He goes to meet them. I think he just wanted to meet the one guy. Slovy. I don't know.
Isn't it Simenov?
Yes.
Yeah.
The S-man.
Yeah.
And but then there's other guys as well.
Yeah.
And these are my old classmates, blah blah. And then they're like planning their dinner the next day.
Because one of their friends, Zirkov, is leaving, and it's like a farewell party.
Yeah, they're seeing him off, and he's like this very accomplished, handsome, alpha male kind of guy. And our protagonist has, he hates him basically.
Our protagonist is a Sigma male.
Yeah, no, he's a I don't know. He's an epsilon male.
We don't have to do this.
And first of all, he's obviously jealous of all his qualities. But yeah, he kind of hates just humans in general. So
yes.
Anyway, he through some kind of social, like, wanting to prove himself or something, he decides that he's going to invite himself to this dinner.
Yes. And he does so in a pretty, like, obstructive way, just with kind of disregard for any of the formalities or anything, just kind of like forces himself into it and makes them comply because I guess he knows that they will like comply with these formalities. Like, it would be more respectable to say yes than no, maybe.
Yeah, I think the dinner cost like 7 rubles per person, and they were saying like, so it'll be 21 in total because there's 4 of them, and then no, wait, there's 4 including the guy they see off, but he's not paying.
Yes.
So I guess the 3 of them are paying. And then he goes like, "Oh no, that'll be 28 rubles."
Yeah. So 28 including the rent.
Right. Yeah, including because of course I'm going as well. Yeah. So that's how he came to this dinner, and immediately he regrets it. Right? He's like, "I don't have the money for this.
Yeah.
I hate these people. Why do I even like?" But now I can't back out.
Yeah.
And so he forces himself to go, and it's just awful. He's an hour too early. They reschedule, but they didn't tell him. So he's just completely pissed from the start.
Yeah.
And like, he clearly doesn't fit in, hasn't seen these people in a while, and
is very standoffish with them.
Yeah.
And because it's a this is written like after the fact. Well, obviously, because he's the narrator, we understand what he's thinking as well, and he interprets almost everything that they do as like an attack against him. Whether it's being polite to him is just another way of embarrassing him. Being like laughing at him, but out of like some kind of because they view him as pathetic is obviously like interpreted negatively. But it's like, it does feel like they could do more or less anything, and it could be interpreted as like a slight against him. Yeah,
and to be fair, they are kind of assholes.
They are, yeah.
But probably for a reason, because he's also like a huge asshole.
Yeah.
Like, no one told him about the rescheduling of the dinner, and then when the guy's like, "Oh, you've been here for an hour," and the guy was like, "Oh, he's like, "Oh, I forgot to tell him."
Yeah.
Like, and he doesn't apologize or anything.
Well, see, this is one thing I find kind of interesting, because it's not as if their opinions of him began at that dinner, right?
No, of course not. Yeah.
And this kind of, I think, speaks more broadly to the way this guy has conducted his life.
Yeah.
For his whole life, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, not digress. He then, like, between embarrassing himself terribly and completely, like, retreating and not engaging with any of the people at the dinner table, he spends the whole night there, basically. It kind of goes between him, like, it goes between them enjoying themselves by themselves, completely ignoring his existence, and him occasionally shouting at all of them.
Yeah.
And, like, making a huge fuss and not complying with any of the, like, formalities that they're engaging in.
And the way that it's written, you get these incredible tangents where he just goes off on, like, I don't know, like the way that he would yell at them or would embarrass them, but it's all in his head, right?
Yeah.
He's playing out these insane scenarios in his head, how he would get back at them.
Yeah.
Or, and this is a different thing, the whole self-pity thing, where he plays out these scenarios in his head of, like, you know, which one is it where he's like, and then I'll be sold, I'll have to go to Siberia, and
yeah.
like, because this guy that they're sending off, he's super successful, and he plays out this scenario in his head where he has a duel with him, like an old-fashioned, like, pistol duel, and the police would arrest him and they send him off to Siberia, and then he loses all his, like, his livelihood, his career, the woman that loves him, who actually doesn't exist, of course.
Yeah.
And after 6 years, he'll come back to the guy's house, who is now happily married and has a beautiful daughter, and he'll say to him, "Look at me, I have nothing because of you, but I forgive you."
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, he plays this out in his head, pities him for something that hasn't even happened. But then he also acknowledges, also, this is just from a novel, I read.
Yeah. It, like, the whole thing of, like, it's like this, like this polar opposite, like, feelings towards people of, like wanting someone's friendship and wanting to smack them, like, and it just like flips, it, like, very, very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, and the scenarios he plays out in his head, he's either an extreme victim or a brave hero. He, like, demonstrates his moral righteousness or his strength against the crooked society or something.
Yeah.
And in a way, and this is why this novel is kind of rough in a way, is also because, like, I found that part kind of relatable. Like, I go off on my own, like, fantastical tangents in my head all the time.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, when I'm just, like, angry at someone, right?
Yeah.
I play out the scenario of, like, this is how I get back at them.
Sure.
Then I'll be the one laughing now, bitch. And then I play out this, like, 10-year scenario in my head in 5 seconds. And then at the end of my train of thought, I'll just shake their hand and be like, okay, see you next time.
Yeah. It really does happen. And, you know, the idea of, like, having, like, the perfect argument with someone as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of power fantasy.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing that I was thinking when I was reading this book, is, like, that, like, power is such an important part of this novel. The narrator has virtually no power. I think during the time where he's actually writing it, he's retired, but even during the episodes, he's living in poverty. All his schoolmates, they are all in very successful positions. They all mock him because of his low salary. And in a way, like, when you read the way that he thinks about other people and the way that, and his desires, you would never want him to be in any position of power. It would be like an absolute disaster. Like, he openly wrote about how he sometimes thought that love was, like, love was the, I don't know if it's desire, but maybe the desire to be tyrannized by your beloved. He talks about, like...
No, didn't he say for him, loving someone means having the power to tyrannize them? Something like that.
Yeah, maybe that's it. That's it, yeah.
Like he's never actually loved someone like in a pure way.
And he constantly mocks like these military men who are his old school pals because of how kind of superficial they are, and how they, you know, they actually kind of enjoy themselves. And you know, I don't know if there's something to be said about I've never really thought about it before, but yeah, it's like
I think I've identified a lot with that kind of thought in middle school.
What, the like everyone's stupid kind of thing?
Well, it's like okay, it's like being at a birthday party of someone you're not really friends with.
Yes, yeah.
But you've been invited because like formalities or whatever. And you were stupid enough to actually go.
Yeah.
And then everyone is off enjoying themselves, like in their own like little social upper class, and you're just off on the side being like, look at these assholes in their frivolous parties. Look at them laughing over there, giggling like idiots. I'm over here thinking about deep shit.
There's that.
And then someone talks to you and it's like, so are you enjoying yourself? And you're like, and then you have a voice crack, and then you're embarrassed and hate yourself, and that's how the party ends.
There's that like meme, I think, of like people sitting on the subway, and there's a thought bubble coming from everyone's heads, which leads to the same bit of text, which is like, I am incredibly original. I'm having my own thoughts, and all these people around me are complete idiots.
Are we close enough to the?
Oh yeah. The mic's picking us up for sure. I hope so. But yeah, I think that's like an extremely relatable part of this book, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to read, because the whole description of that scene with the officers, I don't know if they're officers, but the school friends is just. It felt like something I'd experienced before, even though I can't unless I've like heavily repressed it. It feels as if it's something that I've experienced, something that I've experienced in a dream, maybe, I don't know, like
well, there is the way that we get an insight into his thoughts while things are happening, and the scenarios he plays out, and how he describes his anger and his like resentfulness is kind of, it's relatable because he's so alone in his thoughts. Like he feels like truly isolated, in a way that I think anyone can relate. Like even if there's no specific instance, especially kind of the way that like, and that's why it's also interesting that there's school friends, because it is very much a kind of middle school type of hierarchy. And it seems like he never really moved on from that either. Yeah,
I suppose so. But and as well, you know, there is that kind of well-trodden like cultural like thing, like you have your like school reunion, and this guy's got this like amazing job or whatever, and you know, like it's the basis of like so many like romantic comedies and stuff. And films. Go on.
I want to talk about I don't know if self-pity is the right word exactly, because it's slightly different, but this notion of enjoying your own victimhood, enjoying your own suffering.
Of course. So this is a quite big component of the book.
Kind of this another thread of his personality, I guess.
I mean, it is the book itself, right? The book, he even just admits at the end, this is corrective punishment, describes it as like writing these things is incredibly painful, but and that's kind of why he's doing it.
And so I guess to amplify this idea, there's the whole episode of the toothache, and he speaks about how, you know, having a terrible toothache can be very pleasurable, because you feel so the pain is so unjust. There's like no why did nature do this to me? You know, there's there's no direct causation of the pain. You don't know why you're having that pain.
Yeah.
It's sudden, it's sporadic. Even if you go to the doctor, he can't really help you. You know, he can like mess around with it and tell you if you drink this, you'll be good in a few months. But there's no immediate cure, and it's And then I guess the moaning component. He talks about how like if you have a toothache, you're like moaning in pain, and the very reason why you're moaning is to express actually a certain joy that you feel from self-pity almost. Because you could just shut the fuck up. It's not like moaning makes the pain less.
Oh, yeah.
But there's something pleasurable in lamenting your pain. Screaming at the heavens, why me, basically.
So I think I remember like hearing about a study ages ago that apparently swearing does actually help alleviate pain. Obviously they didn't know that at the time. But it is interesting, like, and it's kind of like when babies are born, they cry because it's like, why me? Why did you have to bring me into this? I don't know if I have anything to say on that.
Yeah, but this is a big thing in the book, and probably I would say it might even be the main theme of.
It's like a precursor to sadomasochism.
Yeah, and it's his whole life sucks, and like he's incredibly resentful because he seems to actually be somewhat intelligent, or at least he's hyper conscious of himself, and like he knows when he fucks up, and he knows all these evil tendencies within him, and he is kind of a smart person, but contrasting that with the lack of success in his life and his low status and so on, he's in this resentful spiral of the world owes me more. Why am I at the bottom and all these assholes are at the top?
Yeah.
But then that again, like, gives him a sort of pleasure. This asking of why I deserve so much more, but I'm in this shitty position. Injustice, the world is unjust, like screaming out this kind of I am the victim of natural injustice. That's in a way pleasurable. To see yourself as a kind of victim of society, and that then becomes a reason for him not to better his own condition. Because if he tries and fails, that would be embarrassing. So he would rather just revel in this like disgustingness at the bottom. Right?
Yeah, for sure. And like that, and I guess that's what the underground is. Like, it's like not the place where you're just not trying, and like you are like constantly revolving around in the same shit all the time, and like never dreaming about getting out of it, having like this, there's a lot of this book is about kind of dreaming as well. Like when we have his ideas about how he would like to, overcome and defeat these people who are above him and whatever. But ultimately, like, he can never get out of this bind. And what did I want to talk about?
We have to talk about the girl eventually. But
yeah, overcoming people. Take over.
Take over?
No, you take over. I forgot my point.
I think it's time for a drink.
It's been like 5 minutes. No, we can talk for a bit longer.
Okay. So, why won't you enable me? Okay.
So, there is a big theme of like nature, and like what exactly nature is in this book, and part of his whole kind of dialogue at the beginning is him resenting basically like science.
So his liver hurts, but he doesn't want to go to a doctor.
Yeah, and we also have like the the 2 times 2 equals 4, 2 times 2 equals 5 thing.
Right.
Where he describes like this real anguish at like being faced with things that he can't change. In this case, 2 times 2 equals 4, and he describes them as like, these are like these natural laws.
Yeah.
Right? And in a way, this connects to Nietzsche in a way that the whole idea with Zarathustra is that we are, or rather, as like now that God is dead, we have to reckon with this new freedom of we could call it like rationality or whatever, or like the scientific method, but we are also bound by that, right? So
yeah,
we are bound by this truth that 2 times 2 equals 4, and we can't make it 2 times 2 equals 5, and it's like really, really, really distressing for this character, for the narrator, that he can't make 2 times 2 equal 5, or that.
So what do you think is that? That's obvious. That seems to be like some kind of metaphoric meaning, right? Obviously, he doesn't actually care about the numbers themselves. So
I think it's maybe it's like a criticism of society, because like even though we can observe things like gravity, for example, how do I word this? I guess like the idea of like a law is still socially, we still understand law in terms of it's like a socially constructed thing.
You mean like the actual law, not like natural law?
No,
like criminal law, civil law, and so on.
Yeah, but I mean more in the sense that like, I don't know how to articulate this.
I was thinking more of certain kaksa in Japanese. What do you call it? Qualitative difference. Yeah, disparities between people. So, for example, his school friend, the really like handsome, gifted, talented, whatever guy, or also like coming from a wealthy family and so on. Like he has certain natural advantages,
or advantages that are described as natural.
Right. Or yes, that's a good point actually. And I guess the ultimate masochistic fantasy for someone like our main character would be to say that, he has, this is like a wall that nature put there, that he has no chance because of these differences, and that, the only thing he can do is resign to this bottom position, even though he is whatever, so superior in his thought and so on.
Yeah. Yes, that makes much more sense. That says it much clearer. Like there's one example that he gives. He talks about Zirkov, this school friend, the handsome guy. I think when he graduates from school, he gets like an estate with 13 like peasants, so like described as like 13 souls, and it's I think it's described as like a natural gift or something.
Yeah.
And he explicitly use the word natural, and it is like kind of within. He's seeing like this societal system which is described as natural, but in a way it's kind of like how would I say, kind of, I guess, cowardly to like accept these things as natural, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's like widely recognized. That's like recognized by him.
But he's so self-conscious that he realizes his own cowardice, and then, he would be like, "Oh, I'm such a coward. I'm such a worthless piece of shit," and just reveling in this like self-insulting, bringing himself down. Is also in some way pleasurable to him.
Yeah. But I think it is also maybe kind of inescapable, because like thinking about this, like, when it comes to like building habits in your life, for example, and like you can think even about like, you know, things like habitus, like things that are kind of in like social behaviors that are inherited by you and stuff like that, from your parents and stuff.
Yeah.
And the way that throughout, you know, the way people develop through their lives is so strongly affected by their environment and like the conditions in which they grow up in, that escaping that, when it comes to people who are like in the underground, at really like the bottom, like he is, there is kind of almost no way. And I guess like this kind of scary idea about this book is that even if you are intelligent, you are only intelligent enough to understand how fucked you are, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like this guy seems almost chronically unable to, for example, build a good habit to get himself out of poverty, to square his debts, to make a friend, like a good friend. And it's not because of his intelligence, but it's because of this like kind of rot inside of him.
Yeah, he's just resentful toward everything.
Yeah, and I think maybe one of the ways we can imagine this as inspiring Nietzsche is in Nietzsche's. It's maybe inspiring to Nietzsche as like a Hamen Kyoshi, like a this is the guy you don't want to become, so you must affirm life.
Yeah.
And because there's no other way. And
ein abschreckendes Beispiel.
Yeah. That one.
A bad example.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's also the kind of guy who, and we see this at the end a bit with the girl, but if something good comes his way, if he's about to actually have something good in his life, he will gladly destroy that for himself at the last minute.
Yeah.
It's just so that in retrospect, he can whine about, oh, why did I do that? I fucked it up. I could have had something good, and now I don't have it, and I'm such a piece of shit. And then this like lamenting about that fact is kind of what fuels him to not allow himself to have anything good. Like if he can destroy it for himself, then he can whine about it later, and whining about it is somehow more pleasurable for him.
Yeah, maybe. I think as well, maybe it's also to do with having like control over his own failure.
Yeah. That's a really good one. Yes.
Right. Like, and one of the reasons that he doesn't do things in the first place, I think, is maybe because of that, and like he intentionally sabotages himself a lot. And I think because there's kind of no other option for him, like when he goes out for dinner with the school friends, like he's already, from years and years before when they're in school, he describes already like hating these people and not really getting on that well with them. So for it's never been like he's never really been in a position to make this dinner work, and he's certainly not developed in a positive way since being in school, so that he could meet these people and they would actually like respect him. Nor does he want their respect anyway, which is again part of this whole like cycle. He kind of wants to sabotage himself, and we hear about it with he describes a friend that goes unnamed, and it's only like a short couple paragraphs in the second chapter. He describes like making a friend and like gaining their trust only so he can like destroy them and like, reduce them to tears. But yeah, so we should probably explain what happened with the prostitute, Lisa. So after having this terrible dinner with his school friends, they leave to go to a brothel, and he basically follows them. And but by the time he gets there, they've already disappeared. And being incredibly drunk, he buys a prostitute, and then we fast forward to him waking up in the room with her, and they have this conversation, and he kind of becomes sort of, I guess, like intoxicated by this idea of freeing her. But this comes after like telling this woman that everything that she's doing right now is gonna lead to terrible outcomes. Like, you think he's like very moralizing towards her, and he's like, you know, you think you're like young and spirited now, but you'll be crushed down by this whole thing, and you'll be discarded at the age of 25 and whatever.
They'll put you in a sludgy grave.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that girl I saw this afternoon, and
which you didn't actually see.
Yeah, yeah. He just basically tells her like how horrible her life is going to turn out on this path.
And whilst he's doing this, he's describing like he likes the game, and you're like, what's the game?
Yeah, he likes the game of leading her on or something like that.
Yes, yeah.
But he also describes this very beautiful family life of what real love is.
Yeah, yeah.
And there is some aspect of him that seems like genuine, like some part of him that is like, I wish I wasn't so rotten that I could have allowed myself a life like this. Like true love and getting married and having children and all this. You know, contrasted with, I guess, like the dirty life of a prostitute.
I think, yeah, I think you could also, like, because we also have this theme of books as well, which he talks about quite a lot, like this, and I guess the fantasy that books offer. And he will describe like a thought that he's had, and then admit that he's had the thought because he read it in a book.
Yeah.
And it's a similar kind of thing, right? Like, you read a book and it gives you this idea of something that seems kind of pleasurable, and you kind of desire that, and that could be like a family life, for example. So I think in a way, like that whole sermon that he gives to this woman is probably more informed by like that rather than necessarily like what he wants, right?
Yeah.
Although I do think that it might be what he wants, but my main point, I feel like it comes from a place of it, almost like it comes from a place of him wanting to talk about a book that he read, rather than like it's kind of hard to describe, but like,
I don't know. So basically, he gives her his number, or not his number, his address.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Come see me."
Yeah.
Like basically, you know, the implication being like, I'll save you from this horrible place.
Yeah.
And well, so he goes home. He has this terrible exchange with his. Well, a few days pass.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's dreading if she actually comes, because you know he's living in absolute poverty. All like the fact that he was basically lying about everything.
Yeah.
And like just the absolute piece of shit that he is, and he would be very embarrassed.
He doesn't have a proper dressing gown.
He doesn't have a dressing gown, and so on.
His servant hates him and makes fun of him.
And she hates his servant.
Yeah.
So and then so the scene where she walks in is when he is like peak yelling at his servant in a pretty unreasonable way as well. Like he like withheld his wage out of spite.
Yeah.
And was like, "I'm not gonna fucking pay you. What are you gonna do about it? How dare you? How dare you not even ask for your wage?"
She comes in and he's like, "You find me in an odd situation, Lisa."
Yeah, and he's also like in his head like, I already know that her walking in on this, seeing my lowness, seeing like this embarrassment, I'm gonna let it out on her.
Yeah.
Like he's already decided that in his head, and he's like, "Oh, poor girl, but yeah, that's just how it is now."
Yeah.
He has no intention of stopping himself or anything.
No, and it's really, really horrible. Like he's just like unloads on her.
Yeah, so he has this kind of, it's like the first like kind of humbling and real moment where he basically yells at her, telling her that everything he said the other night when he was describing his beautiful family life and so on, it was a complete lie, and the only reason why he did that is because he was embarrassed earlier in that day by his school friends, and now he wanted to dominate and, you know, terrorize someone else.
Yeah.
And so that's why he did that. But then she, instead of like forsaking him for his wickedness, like almost like she appreciates like someone being real for once, I guess. And it's like she's like touched by his honesty and like admitting how low of a piece of shit he is. That must be something really hard to express.
Yeah, it kind of describes her as not listening to the horrible things that he's saying to her, but rather like hearing his unhappiness.
Yeah.
In him, like it's like a genuine unhappiness.
So I guess they fuck.
Yes. Yeah, they do. This is after she actually like consoles him.
Yeah.
Like, is quite maternal towards him.
Right, and we're also reminded that the roles are basically reversed now.
Yeah.
Where he's the one, basically he's the prostitute on the bed lying and crying, and she's
the one saving him, or promising maybe not promising, but relieving that.
Holding out a life rope.
Yeah.
And of course, he has to go and fuck it all up intentionally.
Yeah, but before that, it is kind of like, that's like the nicest part in the whole book.
Yeah.
And I think we should just like recognize that.
Yes.
It is, and it's also like at probably the lowest stage, like the lowest low of the book, really, as well. Like in terms of, he's not putting on airs, trying to be like obnoxious for the sake of it. He's like actually being kind of honest.
Yeah, he's being genuine for once, which is kind of also why it's. So it's the first time that it seems like, because he laid all his feelings bare, all this like resentfulness is maybe stripped for a moment, or at least it's laid bare, and then as a reader you kind of get hopeful about like, okay, now you've gotten rid of all this shit, you've said it all, now you can finally aim up, you can finally start improving your life, right?
Yeah.
But then, you know, he's just like destroys it all, and yeah,
and like this, and the whole, definitely this whole like encounter with Lisa is like, there's this contrast between like utopianism and like, I don't know how to say it any other way, but like your immediate situation and like things that limit you from being better, things that might limit you from being better, whether that's in yourself or whether that's like societal. But like he crushes this woman's dreams of like using prostitution to gain some kind of like, whether it's economic independence or like some kind of social status or anything. He like just attempts to completely destroy that. And in this situation, even though everything is destroyed, in him it seems like a hopeful place to move on from.
And it is kind of.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it could be, it's not.
It could be if they now love each other and start a happy family.
Sure, yeah.
But in his head, he's already like, I hate her. I hate her for having seen me at my lowest. And like this kind of maternal comfort that she gave him, he's like, he's extremely resentful because of that. Because he's extremely socially conscious as well. He very much cares about what people think about him.
Yeah.
And yeah, so basically, she's like on the bed, kind of crying, wondering what the fuck her life is going to be now, and she gets up to leave, and he runs up to her and gives her like some money, basically. Put some money. Like
in the like when it's described, he just, instead of writing down what he gave her, he just writes ... So I can read you a little passage. Goodbye, she said, making for the door. I suddenly ran to her, seized her hand, opened it, and put ... and closed it again. Then I turned at once and quickly sprang away to the opposite corner, so as least not to see ... And then it's later revealed that it's a 5 ruble bill, which we assume is because they slept together.
Right, so she crumples it up. While he runs to the other corner of the room, she crumples it up and throws it on the table.
Yeah.
And she leaves, never to return, of course. Now, I think it's kind of obvious, but I guess, why do you think did he decide to give her the money?
Why did he give her the money?
Yeah.
I mean, because he had sex with her?
Well, yeah, okay. I think the point is that they had this whole talk, and then, first of all, he gave her this promise of this family life.
Yeah.
And then they had this whole humbling talk of, no, but actually I'm just a piece of shit, and look at how shit I am. But then they still slept together and like comforted each other.
Yeah.
So there's like some hope here that, you know, maybe she can get out of this prostitution. She can finally leave prostitution and she can finally have something with someone. Even if he's a piece of shit and even if he is poor and so on, she's willing to embrace that. But he's so petty to like, if I give her money now, that will hurt her the most.
Right, yeah.
Being like, no, there's no family life, there's no happiness here, you're just a prostitute. Go back to your whorehouse.
God, yeah, it's so fucking evil.
Yeah, and that's why, and he writes, he writes like something in brackets, something to the extent of like, I almost lied about this part. Of what, right? What is it?
Where is it? Is it in that
It's just before, I think it's just before he gives her the money.
Can't see any brackets on mine.
Damn it. Alright, give me a sec.
Yeah.
Which means talk.
I don't really have anything to say. But no.
Okay. Right, so for my part it says so he gives her the money, and right after it says, I almost told a lie this very minute. I was about to write that I did not do it deliberately, that I did it because I didn't realize what I was doing, having in my folly completely lost my head. But I don't want to lie, and therefore I say frankly that I opened her hand and put something in it out of spite. So the reason why he gave her the money is, you know, with the intention to hurt her in like the most wicked way, spiteful way.
Yeah. And he describes, this cruelty was so affected as, it came not from my heart but from my stupid head. This cruelty was so affected, so much from the head, so purposely contrived, so bookish, that I myself could not bear it even for a minute. Yeah, he's not a good guy.
No.
But, so her throwing it away, I think is actually like quite an optimistic tone for the book. Like, she is in a similar position to him. Like, they're both incredibly poor, they're both in the underground, essentially, right? They, but what she does is like, she kind of does something that he would dream of doing.
Yeah.
Like, he would dream of like taking the 5 ruble note and chucking it on the table.
Yeah.
And like, don't even care if you see it or not. I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm gonna do it and then I'm gonna leave. Like, and it's like an active thing that she does, which he never can achieve. Never achieves.
Yeah.
He never like really actively gets to do anything that he like fantasizes about doing. And he says that he never sees this woman again, and we don't know why. For whatever, I mean, I guess it's unlikely, but
well, I think she hates him.
Yeah,
and is first of all very hurt, but probably, I guess she probably moved on with her life, right?
Yeah,
she
that's
probably,
it, right?
Like she probably turned things around.
It's definitely possible that like she, unlike him, you like activated her own agency.
Yeah,
and like tried to get out of whatever. Definitely got out of that situation, and maybe that was like symbolic for her renouncing her like being a prostitute, or like her renouncing like living in these conditions.
Yeah, so there's on like surface level you would think, and this is why I was kind of doubtful to call it self-pity at first, but on surface level you might think that this masochistic pleasure from your own misfortune is a kind of self-pity, a kind of victimhood play, which is not exactly right. So I would say the kind of victimhood culture that maybe we have nowadays with wokeism and so on, that there is a more like, there is a just denial of your own agency, basically. You're saying, I have no agency. The reason why things suck for me is not because of me. I can't do anything about it. It's because of these boundaries. It's because of whatever. The men at the top, the white people, the this or that or the XYZ, right? There's some group or there's some like, it's Marxist materialism, right? My circumstances limit me in a way so that I have no agency to get out of this position. What he does is one stage deeper down the rot by saying, I have agency. I am smart. I could get out of this. He's very self-conscious of this. There are things I can do to improve my life, absolutely, but he chooses not to do them. He actively chooses not to do them, and that puts him like one level deeper than just self-pity. It's not just self-pity. It's worse.
Yeah. No. Like, okay. I mean, I don't want to turn the conversation this around too much, but where do we begin? Like, I don't think that that's so. The idea of like being critical of, for example, systems that exist in like society is necessarily a kind of nihilism or like a kind of inaction, because you for example, you can't change systems unless you act in some way in response to them, right? Like and also like social systems do genuinely like affect people's lives.
Of course, yeah, no one's denying that.
Yeah. So I just want to be, I don't know, like, it's easy to, I guess, conflate like being conscious of social systems and desiring to change them with a belief that you are a complete victim to the system and there is maybe nothing that you can do about it.
No, yeah, for sure, yeah.
But I think you're right about this guy being, he's aware of what he can do, but he doesn't do it. But it's still not super clear to me, like, why exactly he's in this place. Because, like, you know, if we think about like, you know, people's like upbringing, for example, and like the way that helps them to, or disadvantages them when it comes to making like important decisions in their lives. Like if you, maybe if you're young and you have good experiences with like organizing yourself and you succeed because of that, you'll be more likely to organize yourself better in the future. In the case of this guy, for example, he can identify a problem, but he doesn't know how to solve it. He doesn't seem to know how to solve it. But like there is also an element where you feel like he doesn't really want to either.
Yeah, no, I think in many cases he does. I wouldn't necessarily solve it with his own power, but he does know what he should do for betterment. So, for example, with his liver or whatever pain he has, he's like, I know I should go to the doctor. I believe in medicine. I don't deny medicine, but I'm not going to go to the doctor out of spite.
Yeah.
Like there's it's one thing to say that the reason why I'm poor is because I'm lower class and I don't have chances and there's no opportunity and the job market sucks and all these outside factors. And therefore, despite all my intelligence and my capacity, I'm at the bottom. He's one level deeper than that.
Yeah.
He is conscious of his own opportunity. He's conscious that he can do things to actively better himself. And he takes pleasure he gets something out of actively sabotaging himself, having control over his own failure, as you said. And so he's not just saying the job market sucks and I'm lower class, so therefore I'm poor and my life sucks. He's like, the job market sucks and I'm lower class and all these things, and here's what I can do to improve things, but I'm going to do the exact opposite. And then things will really suck.
yeah, that's true.
And he's like a deeper, one level deeper than just victimhood.
There was something else I wanted to bring up. There's kind of like a maybe this kind of connects up. He talks about talking about society and talking about I guess politics as well. He says talks about the idea of I'll just give the quote.
Is this the universal basic income thing?
No.
Okay.
Wait, what's that?
We'll get to that, sorry.
So he's kind of in the last couple pages, he reflects on what he's written, and he describes what he's written as not really a story. It's not really, there's no hero. There is all the makings of an anti-hero in him in this book. And he kind of half apologizes for how shitty it made us feel. And he gives this quote: "We've even grown so accustomed." Hang on. We've all grown accustomed to life. We're all lame, each of us more or less. We've even grown so unaccustomed. We've even grown so unaccustomed that at all times we feel a sort of loathing for real, quote, living life, and therefore cannot bear to be reminded of it. For we've reached the point where we regard real living life almost as labour, almost as service, and we all agree in ourselves that it's better from a book. And why do we sometimes fuss about why these caprices, these demands of ours? We ourselves don't know why. It would be the worst of us if our capricious demands were fulfilled. Go on. Try giving us more independence, for example. Unbind the hands of any one of us. Broaden our range of activity. Relax the supervision. And but I assure you, we will immediately beg to be taken back under tutelage. So I feel like this is probably quite connected to Russia at the time. It's about being ruled, about he seems to be saying that I don't know, it's we don't want freedom, we want to be ruled. We don't really want our desires, I guess. I don't know if I'm chatting shit here.
Yeah, he's saying he doesn't want real life because real life is labor. There's I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. So we have the connection with
Mm.
books and fantasy, I guess, as well.
No, that is also one passage that I read twice, but I can't really tell you what to make of it. I was going to mention there was a funny little criticism of the utopia and I guess universal basic income, where he's like, this is a bit early in the book, but he's like, he's basically saying, I swear if humans had all they ever wanted, if they were just living in paradise and they would get all the delicious foods and they wouldn't have to work and all this, like, basically this kind of utopian fantasy. It's like, they wouldn't dedicate themselves to the arts, they wouldn't live out their creative side, they would, take the first opportunity to destroy it all and make a wreck of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I didn't pick up on that.
It was somewhere in there. I was listening to the audiobook and I was on my bike, so I couldn't write down where it was. I think somewhere in the middle-ish. But
yeah, maybe we'll pick it up after the drink break. Yeah, there's like this book is a criticism of a utopian socialist novel by a guy called, let me get his name up. The book is called What Is to Be Done, and it's by a guy called Chernyshevsky. And it's like this book is described as a criticism of utilitarianism as well, which I thought would be maybe a little bit more obvious.
This book, Notes from the Underground.
Yeah. Like
what criticism of utilitarianism.
The one thing that I picked up is like the idea of how do we say, like quantifying everything in terms of like what is pleasurable and what is not pleasurable. And I guess the whole rationale of utilitarianism is like pleasure is a thing that we should seek, and maybe not just pleasure, but like what's the word, like higher pleasures, like learning and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that's almost I wouldn't say that's very utilitarian actually.
What is?
I think the utilitarian maximization of pleasure is usually just like, each person decides their own pleasure, so base pleasures are just as valuable as like higher pleasures.
Not like
my reading of utilitarianism.
Right, but there are different like strands of utilitarianism.
Yeah, right? It's not very John Stuart Mill, but it's.
Yeah, but I still think John Stuart Mill would at least be aware of these things.
Yeah. But he was a big like fan of education, so on, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, we're jumping again. One passage from the end of the last page. He says, "For my part, I have merely carried to extremes in my life what you have not dared to carry even halfway, and in addition, you have mistaken your cowardice for common sense, and have found comfort in that, deceiving yourselves. So that, as a matter of fact, I seem to be much more alive than you." And this is addressed to the reader. I thought this was interesting, especially the line, "mistaken your cowardice for common sense." Basically saying, you would say, okay, not embarrassing yourself in front of your friends in this way, not, lashing out at your servant for like the least like minute things. When this girl comforts him, maybe you can just have a nice moment together. Obviously don't give her money to like denigrate her afterwards. You're getting nothing out of that. Why would you do that? All these ideas that you might think are, it's common sense. Why the fuck would you do that? There's nothing in it. He's simply like, he's saying you're just a coward. You're afraid. You're afraid of the hell that would rain into your life. You're afraid of tearing the ceiling down on you. And I've done that, and so therefore my life in a sense is more real than yours.
Yeah, or maybe he's like even righteous for doing this, for destroying his life.
And I think that's the pleasure. That's where he gets his pleasure from this kind of philosophy of I have experienced something more real, more true. Because he does, even though he lies to people all the time, he always insists like, I love truth, I love justice.
And he does genuinely find himself in situations that like no one experiences.
Yeah.
Because, and it's entirely of his own doing as well. Yeah, so I guess like
he's like, I've almost in the way that a hero descends into the cave to fight a dragon, he has taken upon himself to make his life like an active effort to descend deeper and deeper into the layers of hell.
Yeah.
And he's entirely responsible for that.
Or at least he's taking he's trying to take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he's reflecting on this whole experience of his life, and like he's narrativizing things that he's done in the past, and he's trying to make sense of them. But like, if he were to do that from the beginning, you could say that maybe that's quite like a, I don't know, noble thing to do. Like you can imagine like setting out before your journey of completely fucking up your whole life.
Yeah.
And like everyone's like, good luck. They all shake your hand and they like your mum makes you some sandwiches or something.
You throw them away.
But you know, it's not that, right? It's like he's like
in retrospect wants to
he's doing it in retrospect.
Yeah, I think maybe it's not a super, even though he's very conscious of all his shit, he's maybe not actually like put his top value into words, right?
Right.
If we're thinking of a hierarchy of values according to which everyone acts, it's kind of hard to identify what his top priority is in life, like what motivates his way of action.
Yeah.
It's probably something like that, but maybe in a non-articulated subconscious level, and it's kind of shining through there at the end.
Yeah, I don't think this is the kind of guy that would have premeditated.
No.
And if anything, it would kind of go against his philosophy he would want to smash his hierarchy of values.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, we'll get to the last page, and which has a nice little detail, and then we'll go for a drink, I think. So the the last couple of sentences go as follows. Where should I start from? We're stillborn and have long ceased to be born of living fathers, and we like this more and more. We're acquiring a taste for it. Soon we'll contrive to be born somehow from an idea. But enough. I don't want to write any more, quote, from the underground. ... And then there's the next paragraph, which goes, however, the, quote, notes of this paradoxalist do not end here. He could not help himself and went on. But it also seems to us that this may be a good place to stop.
So this is
a meta
narrative. The last paragraph here is like basically Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
Like being like this fictional narrator that I created.
Yeah.
Like he wrote a lot more of his memoirs because he couldn't stop himself in his self-pity and his narcissist aggrandizing of his own life. And he wrote more, but let's not.
Yeah, it's a good place to stop. So I think the last line, but enough. I don't want to write any more from underground, is the perfect place to stop. The perfect place to stop, and then reveal that he continues writing. Yeah, because it's like
he has to ruin it. Yeah.
I want to stop, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
You can imagine him he's like, I don't want to write anymore. He closes his notebook. Steps away from the table, and then immediately he's like, no, I gotta write some more.
I sometimes I play fantasies in my head during class and shit when I'm bored of basically becoming the underground man. Like, what in this moment can I do that would disgust everyone around me the most? What's the worst thing I can do? Or being at a funeral makes you think that way.
Yeah.
What is the most absolute least acceptable thing I can do right now?
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely imagined that before.
and then again, it's pleasurable. It's like funny thinking about it, but from his perspective, he would like the reason why I'm not doing it is because I'm just a coward. It's not my common sense.
Yeah.
Because there is some like real what the fuck would actually happen if I did this.
Yeah. That's right.
And you kind of want to explore that idea, but I'm telling myself, well, obviously not. Why the fuck would I do that? That's stupid.
Yeah, and for him, like his imagination, I think, is one of the things that stops him from doing anything. Because he, like, when he thinks about punching Zirkov or slapping Zirkov, he designs so many different scenarios in his head of like what's going to happen, like including being sent to a gulag.
Yeah.
And like, of course, you're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the. When I read the introduction to this book, there was a section which described it as a what is it? The perpetual dialectic, quote, dialectic of isolated consciousness. And this is, I think this like sums up that thing well. Like, when you're left to your own thoughts, like, you can just completely destroy anything from happening. Like, like that whole idea of like being in your own echo chamber where you don't have any feedback from anyone else, and your mind just kind of goes from do to don't do to like you're a piece of shit to you're better than everyone else, blah blah blah. You should punch the guy, you shouldn't punch the guy, and it binds you and it stops you from acting.
This is a word that our mutual friend Jay taught me yesterday. Analysis paralysis.
Right. Yeah.
Where you overanalyze the social situation that you're in from like all the different approaches you could take from it, so that basically, like by the time that you actually have to act, you're like,
Yeah, it happens. It's yeah. Anyway, but enough. I don't want to talk anymore from underground. We're gonna have a drink.
Okay.
Boys.
However, the ramblings of these idiots do not end here. They could not help themselves and went on.
Hi. We're back.
I thought that would sound funnier than it did.
That's a meta joke. We got red wine.
We have red wine. No fancy drinks today. It's just some cheap combini wine. So, we want to talk about wickedness versus spitefulness.
Yes.
The supposed mistranslation, which is like, I don't know, probably pretty crucial to your interpretation of this book.
So when I started reading, I had an issue with the word spitefulness because I had trouble really grasping what they meant by that. Like for example, if you're second place in a tournament and not giving the winner like a handshake, that might be a spiteful thing, right?
Yeah.
That's like the only thing I could really think of when I think of spite. So having this guy, like, why is him inflicting pain on himself and then reveling in that? Why is that spiteful? I couldn't really grasp that to begin with. But the more I read, the more it grew on me, and by the end I was like, yes. If I look up spiteful in the dictionary, I wanna see underground man.
Interesting.
Like,
For me, like, so I don't know, spiteful, as you described, like not giving someone a handshake out of spite. You wouldn't say that it was. You would never say something like that was out of wickedness.
No, wickedness is like pure evil in it, right?
It's like it kind of has no how do I say? It really has like no remorse. or like
callousness,
mm,
being callous,
and done for the sake of itself. I guess that's the thing, right? It's like some men want to just watch the world burn. Joker moment thing, and like I think that's like we see that with the prostitute when he hands her the money. It's just evil. It's in. We know that it's wicked, I think, because she hasn't done anything against. She hasn't really done anything against him.
She was good to him.
She was actually maybe the only character in this whole book who was actually nice to him. It would be spiteful, the behavior of him to his old school friends, I think.
Yeah,
because they do make fun of him, and he does hate them.
I agree with your classification, and I would also say that spitefulness has a more playful flavor than wickedness. Like doing something out of spite. I'm thinking of like children, being kind of moody, doing something that's uncool, to get attention or something like that, right?
Yeah. Or like purposefully rejecting authority, like in school or from your parents. It's not necessarily like the consequences aren't necessarily. Can't say consequences are evil, but like when you look at the consequences, you don't see that they're motivated by evil. If that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. When you're acting out of spite, you're motivated by a temporary emotional drive, and you're thinking, how does this make me feel? How does this action make me feel? Whereas when you act out of wickedness, you're aiming towards a broader moral effect that's kind of removed from yourself. You want to achieve some kind of negative outcome, negative outcome for society. Yeah. Whereas spitefulness is just, I'm not doing this because this makes me feel this way. Meh.
Yeah, and we can think of like spitefulness as it's kind of like resentment or something. Like you said, it's a kind of emotional, an action that comes from a emotional response. And like, if I don't shake the hand of the guy that beat me in like a tournament or whatever, it would be because of this like feeling that I'd been slighted, and that kind of immediate response to, I guess, it's like a rejection of something, I guess. But being wicked can come out of nowhere as well. Being wicked can be completely premeditated, and not really be like so. What's the word? Like, not necessarily just like it's not really like an emotional response to things in a way. Like, I don't know if we do act like wickedly as a split-second response to something that happens towards us, right?
Yeah, it's more intentional, wanting to inflict negative damage on society, I feel like.
And that is why he is wicked, because he specifically borrows money from his friend so he can buy a pair of gloves, and borrows the beaver pelt to wrap around his neck, so that when he bumps into the officer that slighted him the other day, he can be more successful in doing so or whatever. And it's like so premeditated, and maybe like spite can become wickedness. I don't know.
Yeah, so to me, to go back to the handshake example, for me spitefulness is just as you're everyone expects you to shake their hand. You can't bring yourself to shake his hand because it like makes you admit your loss, or it makes you feel weak. It makes you feel uncomfortable. You don't like that feeling, and that's why you reject it. It's the acceptable thing to do, but you just don't want to accept it. So it's like, no, I don't want to do this. Fuck you. That's spitefulness. Whereas wickedness might be, you shake their hand, and while doing so, you like bump into them and make sure their trophy breaks.
Sure.
And you're like, oh no, I'm so sorry. That's wicked.
Yeah.
Right.
Or it might also be, like maybe shaking their hand, but afterwards like doing something to ensure that they would fail in the future.
Yeah, while you're shaking their hand and everyone's taking pictures, you draw them in close and you whisper in their ear, "I'm gonna kill your family."
Exactly. Yeah. So speaking of our own personal experience,
and he says, "Bro, it's just a chess tournament."
It's just a Dance Dance Revolution tournament. Okay, so yeah, I think that worth thinking about. And one of the things that I've like enjoyed about doing this is, and us talking together more about reading and stuff like that is, we are reading a lot of material. All the material that we've read was not originally published in English, and we're reading translations. And like for example, like me and Phil, one of the first things that we read together, consciously was short stories of Franz Kafka, and we had two very different versions. And the translations were very different, and I think, I don't know. One thing that I'm like becoming much more aware of as we're going along is like what is the translation like, and what do you want from a translation as well, I guess.
Unfortunately with this one, none of us speak Russian.
Yeah.
So if it's Kafka or Nietzsche, I can like dig into the original German and like think about it. But with this one, we're kind of just like, which is also refreshing in a way. Like we're just thinking about the translation approach and not like necessarily about, which one is more accurate to the original, but like how do these different translations reflect on the story? Yeah,
exactly. It's really useful to have different translations, and God, it's such a hard job. Like,
right?
It's genuinely really interesting. You have like the how do I say, like the conflict between how, like, whether you want to translate something super faithfully or whether you want to add or like interpret it in certain ways. And like one thing that seems to be annoying and something that we can't really predict for is like repetition. I read in the preface for this book, as well as another book that I read recently, I can't remember what it was, but about repetition basically being, I don't know whether it was like a trend in translation at some point, but for repetitions to be ignored, and translators, instead of faithfully translating the word into the same word every time, they would avoid repeating the same word. And like if you said like cold, it would go, if you said cold several times, it would go from cold to tepid to freezing and blah 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 blah. And like these sorts of things you really can't anticipate. But I digress. Little translation chat. We had to do it at some point.
Okay.
We should talk next about we're reading more, and like we're trying to like find threads with what we've been reading. So
so far the podcast has been very existentialist.
Let's like think about the connections with Nietzsche and Kafka. So what from what we've read of Nietzsche so far, and we have read together up to part 2 of Zarathustra, even though we've not spoken about part 2 yet. What connections do you see between these two books?
So one big thing I think is that Nietzsche, I guess maybe the value or the attribute he most reviles is self-pity, or pity in general, but also more specifically self-pity. And I think you probably read this book. And because this character, this underground man, he is like, he's the worst, right? He's like the absolute worst.
Yeah.
And I guess this precisely because this like deep layer of self-pity, and even beyond that, sabotaging yourself and so on. And Nietzsche is all about strength versus weakness. He's all about aiming up.
Yeah.
Whereas this character is all about self-pity and kind of aiming down, in a sense, like just wanting to dig yourself deeper and reveling in that.
He is kind of like Nietzsche never really. I don't think Nietzsche ever really points to like this idea specifically in Zarathustra. At least he hasn't so far in what we've read, but it's kind of like the underbelly of, or like you have like the masses or society or whatever. You have the Übermensch, and then but below this society or below the masses, there's like this anti-Übermensch, which is like
the Untermensch.
Yeah. the underground man, right? Yeah. Who how do I say, sees it almost as a brave thing to do to engage in the most destructive and destructive behavior possible. And in rejection of everything else. But it's almost like they're kind of the same in a way, like the Übermensch and the underground man, but maybe only in retrospect.
Why do you mean?
Like, the underground man is like so committed to this like self-sabotage that it's almost like, I know this is going to be a moment in the podcast where you re-listen to it and then you text me later saying like, oh, actually I think you did have a point. Like, he's like so intensely devoted to this like idea of self-sabotage and like rejecting any possible self-improvement that it's kind of like, he's kind of strong, and he describes this, right, like, you're a coward for like accepting what you think is like these norms and like not trying to destroy them and like destroy your life in the process, right? Like, he's like perverted.
Yeah. He wants to establish like a new
maybe I don't know whether he wants to establish it. And again, like, because he's writing on this and reflecting on this, he is kind of just trying to justify his shitty behavior. But it is kind of like almost like the early writings of the Untermensch. Untermensch.
I still can't get over the fact that you prefaced this whole point by saying, I know you won't get it now, but you'll thank me later.
No, that's not what I meant. No, because there are times where I speak and you look at me and you're like, I know that you don't understand what I'm saying, or like, I know that you're trying to figure it out. Not that I'm not saying that I'm coming from like some fucking well of deepness. All I'm saying is I'm bad at articulating myself. But there are times when you will message me later and be like, okay, no, actually you raised a good point or something, you know.
Yeah.
Don't come after me. Yeah, I don't know. It's exploring that idea, I guess. He's like,
I can see the similarity, but
he's committed to this, and it is like almost an ideal of completely fucking up your life in the way that like the Übermensch is like an ideal of doing things the right way all the time.
Yeah.
And like, he is almost like embarrassed maybe that he had like this genuine moment with this woman and like got to this point where he could potentially do something good, that he had to double down and be horrible to this woman.
Yeah.
And do the most spiteful thing you could do, or I guess wicked thing you could do by giving her the money. Like, you know, when it comes to like making, it can be difficult sometimes in life to make the right decision, and like but in his case the difficult thing is making the wrong decision, or like it's like he finds it's like just the reverse, right?
Yeah, it's like when you're like playing a game and you're like exploring different routes, and he's like, I could have done an even shittier thing here. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't complete my like complete asshole route.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you have a moral system in a game, and you're like trying to be 100% evil.
Yeah, it's like me and Hitman trying to kill all the civilians.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. One other thing I was thinking about while we're talking about the other literature we read is that this kind of atmosphere and this kind of self-unimportance and so on that we get from this guy working in civil service, by the way, this is one big point.
Yeah.
He reminds me almost of the lower court staff in Kafka's trial. Like he's living the kind of life in poverty and in this musty offices and this whole like nothing you do matters.
Yeah.
That the kind of court staff in Kafka's trial I would imagine have.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Just like one unimportant civil servant in this thing, and
and the fact that when they talk about his work, it's like, oh, you work for the department, and then it's like, oh no, it's like, yeah, I'm working for the office, and it's like they just have these names that are just very, very abstract. Like there's no description of what actually this is.
Yeah.
And we don't know either, and also there's like this fetishistic kind of attachment to medals and like their significance. Like he talks about medals a lot. He talks about Zirkov being adorned with loads of medals, and he talks about even when he I think when he talks about some of his desires, he talks about medals as well, or he recognizes that having medals is a symbol of his status that could get him somewhere. It's all just like these abstract things, like abstract work, abstract social signifiers. And
okay, one point I wanted to raise is
don't move your feet near the mic.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I have loud socks.
You have very loud socks.
Okay, what is your general takeaway? What is the moral? What is the lesson for your personal life? Having read this book of this terrible example of a human being, what is your takeaway of, how to lead your life in a better way? What is Dostoevsky telling us to avoid?
One of the key things in this book is loneliness or isolation, and types of isolation that are not productive. So we talk about the isolated dialectic, which just leads to this rambling, completely unfocused way of thinking, where you cancel out every possible thing that you want to do and you can't make decisions. And I think a lot of this guy's problems would be potentially solved by having someone who actually looked out for him.
The moment where he opens up to the prostitute and he has this humbling speech admitting what a piece of shit he is, and she accepts him for that. She he says it right, he was surprised at her reaction. Instead of being disgusted with his lowness, she sees his suffering and embraces him for his honesty. I think it's a testament to the power of honesty, of being genuine with people, and how being genuine, even if it can mean saying embarrassing things, saying hurtful things, can earn you real relationships and real friends. Of course, he has to fuck it up because that's his whole philosophy.
Yeah, but it's worth saying as well that this the woman in this novel is not in any position really to give him any support either. If she were, or maybe she is, I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe you could pin it down to just a the circumstances of the novel, but like there could be a situation where this person sticks around and like tolerates all this shit that he does all the time, all this self-sabotaging shit, and all this like constant hurling of insults and stuff, and gets to the point where he can no longer do that and actually becomes a better person.
Yeah, the idea is that she could fix him if he would let her.
Yeah, or maybe not even. Yeah, it's hard. Like, could we say like?
Oh, you mean that she's so indifferent to all his shit that he just gives up on his philosophy?
No, not necessarily. I just not necessarily fix, but like give him enough opportunities to eventually crawl out of his hole. So he had a small opportunity here, and this could have built into something else, right? This was like the bedrock from which to grow into someone that can learn to help themselves rather than sabotage themselves. And he rejected it, as anyone would in that situation, I think. Like, he is supposed to be like this ultimate character of like
the anti-hero.
Self-sabotage. Yeah. And you know, maybe he can't get out of it. We don't know. We don't know really to what extent he's like incapable. But like we know that like if she stuck around, there would be more opportunities for that kind of moment to occur.
Yeah.
And like more opportunities for him to maybe gain some.
Well, I think it's more likely that he would just break her, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe. But you know, I think like you know, there are he has this will to break him and other people, but there are people that have stronger wills than him, probably, right? Like it's not unimaginable that those kinds of people exist. And that is, you know, I think how a lot of, well, it's not always successful, but when people try and, for example, like people who are recovering drug addicts, like if it's like very difficult for people in the immediate surroundings of someone who's trying to like recover from an addiction to drugs, because of like, well, because of that addiction, right? And but you know, like people that go through that and get to a point where they can manage their addiction and maybe overcome their addiction. You know, it's like I'm eternally grateful that you were always stuck by me, even in these moments where I was like fucking fiending for all these things and tolerated all this abuse. It feels kind of similar to this situation, or I could imagine like maybe it's impossible with this character. Like I'm not saying that it's that it's not impossible, but like do you see what I mean here? Like the only real remedy to this kind of situation he is in is like this person who can always provide him with the opportunity to be a better person, or like to do something in his self-interest, or maybe actually self-interest is the wrong word.
But I
see this goes back to the
disagree still.
Okay.
No, I would say he has all opportunity to reform himself at any point. He doesn't need anyone for that. He could flip his life around every second if he wanted to. He just has to do some like fucking thinking and soul searching and thinking about what he wants out of life. And clearly he wants to be I think he wants the kind of pleasure and self-righteousness that comes with being the worst. And so that's what he aims for.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough. I think that's the criticism of utilitarianism. Like he wants what is completely socially unuseful. Like everything that he wants is like.
But he's like an extreme outlier.
Yeah.
So I don't. Like, to make that a criticism of utilitarianism would be to say, in utilitarianism, there would be so many people aiming downward that it would just crash the whole society.
No. That's not what I mean. I don't mean it in the sense that that utilitarianism means that everyone will want to fucking like live in the shittest situation possible. It's more the criticism is the idea that we can perfectly measure what people think is good, like, and what people want. Like we can. The thing that he's frustrated with in the beginning of the book, the 2 + 2 = 5 thing, is that someone else can measure what he perceives. Oh, someone else can measure what is good for him and tell him what is good for him.
Okay, right? I get your point, but I disagree.
Okay.
Because that would be to say, basically, you would. I'm not saying that this is your opinion, but the argument you were just making seems to me to be the complete like moral relativism of saying any single person may decide what is right for them and so on, and fair enough. But that in this case, this guy aiming down and getting pleasure from being the worst and just fucking up his life in the most magnificent way, you're saying that that's what he wants and he should have that, and that's the best outcome for him and for society.
So I don't think that, like, it's okay, let me clarify. I'm not saying that that he is I'm not saying that he is right for wanting these outcomes for himself. I think what this, like, how would I say, it's not saying like you say from like moral relativism point of view that like it's okay to desire the worst possible outcomes for yourself. I think it's more maybe like a criticism of the idea that it is necessarily possible to do that.
That is possible to do what?
To calculate what is perfectly, like, rationally in your self-interest.
So it's a criticism of utilitarianism in the sense that utilitarianism purports that every person has the right to set their own goal, and whatever makes them happy, that is their utility. And you're saying, yes, but like the character in this novel, they might pick something that's the wrong goal, and even though they get pleasure from it, it's bad. And so therefore there should be some kind of social standard for what to aim for?
No. What I'm getting at is actually the idea that there can be a social standard for utility. Because let's like utilitarianism. It is not just the idea that every single person individually can make up their own mind of what they want, and what derives utility for them.
Okay.
Because we also recognize that, for example, we use utilitarianism to organize society, right?
Sure.
We have like rural utilitarianism. We have like we understand for example, like it's not just a case of individuals, but also how people interact with each other. Like Mill recognized that you can't have a activity that is isolated from the people around you. Like there's no like socially free like activity that's free from society.
Okay.
So it's not you can have what you want, but it has also got to compete with the like broad social interest as well, right? And I think what the criticism of utilitarianism is here is the idea that can necessarily be achieved, I guess. Or it's like
that being what?
That you can find like this, perfect, like, what does everyone want kind of thing. Because this guy
wants something else.
Yeah, this guy can want something completely different.
But in saying that, you're legitimizing his way of life.
Yes. But like,
which brings me back to the first thing I said of...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You can, but the only way you can like reconcile... Okay, the only way you can reconcile this activity in terms of like utilitarianism is that it's like harmful to the rest of society, right? His behavior, as it's like harmful to himself. But that measure excludes him. It says to him like, you can't have this like desire to destroy yourself. Like you can't sell yourself. Like Mill would not recognize you selling up your freedom for slavery, right?
Yeah.
And probably wouldn't recognize you like killing yourself,
right?
And like, I don't necessarily think that. So I'm not criticizing utilitarianism,
right?
But I think that's where the criticism lies.
Because this guy does something that he perceives as his correct way of life, or wrong way of life, but he still chooses that.
Yeah.
But it's useless for society.
Yes.
So therefore, the problem with utilitarianism is that I don't get it.
Well, I guess like why shouldn't he be free to live this like disgusting life? He gets everything that he deserves for his behavior, right? He is completely without power because of his own behavior, right? His whole situation is due to his behavior. So like he's not is he getting more out of this situation than other people?
Well, I would say, you know me, I'm a natural rights libertarian, not a utilitarian libertarian. So I would say, yeah, he has the freedom to choose, in fact. But I don't think the book does a great job of criticizing that. I think, if anything, the book is making a case for utilitarianism in the sense of saying, if you are entitled to completely set your own goals and just decide what like pleasures you want to indulge in, you might end up like this guy.
Yeah.
So there should be a social standard.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, no, I get your point, but if someone wants to interpret this book as a criticism of utilitarianism, I get the approach. I just think, out of all the things you can get out of this, like a criticism of utilitarianism is not in my top 20.
Well, that's one of the reasons I want to talk about it.
And if it is a criticism of utilitarianism, I think they're making a shit case.
That's fair enough. I can't remember where I read it, but I think it was in the introduction. And it was talking about like specifically interpreting it as a critique of utilitarianism, and I was kind of perplexed by it as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think also like there are lots of strands of utilitarianism.
Yeah.
And like he was writing specifically in response to like Russian, a Russian author who was actually inspired by like the English utilitarians, I think, but yeah, I don't know. It's something that we would probably need to read a lot more on.
In one sentence, to go back to the original question, one sentence, what is your personal takeaway?
Ah, fuck. What's yours? Need some time to think.
Be genuine, even, comma, I'm sticking to the sentence.
Yeah.
Be genuine, comma, even if it means humiliating yourself, comma, and you'll make a real friend.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily at the top of Dostoevsky's priorities, what he wants to tell us. There's probably some deeper social critique here. But for me personally, I think that's a good takeaway.
Yeah.
Because we have some scenes where he almost gets there, but then he intentionally fucks it up. But I guess the reason why he sees himself superior, or why he thinks that the reader is a coward and he lives life to the fullest, is that he at least has the courage to completely humiliate himself and like be dragged down to the depths. And then from that kind of genuine place that we have in this kind of final scene with the woman, I think you can build a genuine relationship with a romantic partner or just a friend, right?
Yeah, sure.
And basically have the courage to go that far and then seize it. He has the courage to go that far, but he fucks it up.
That's like that's maybe one of the thing that maybe leads into one of the things that I would maybe take away from this, is that avoid cycles of inaction wherever you can, and like there is like a functional limit to how much you should think about some things, and how much you should think about things by yourself. I don't think like him slapping that guy might not have been a bad thing. He would have asserted himself and like been very honest about how he, like, even if he had terrible like reasons for hating this guy, at least he lived it out, right?
Analysis paralysis.
We call it anal payroll.
Anal payroll. I'm on the anal payroll this month.
I would think maybe.
But Lisa is.
Shut up. I think it's all too easy to get caught up in the fantasy of doing things, and then you have the question of, now I've thought about this thing so much, will the reality ever live up to that? No, it won't. So right?
That hits home.
And there's like this sort of like maybe to have a measured relationship with fantasy, or like a measured like appreciation of fantasy, like and fantasizing about things, but like not letting it paralyze from you actually doing something that you would otherwise like to do.
Okay, I won't let you go until you make me a nice and concise sentence. You realize?
Oh, I said it. Like avoid cycles of inaction.
Okay.
Yeah. It was even more concise than you. I didn't even have a comma.
I had 2 commas. Thank you very much. I can have as many commas if you.
You can have many commas.
I can have all the commas.
So let's finish up with a game.
Okay, a little game.
This game is called What Would the Underman Do? Or the Underground Man.
Yeah, it's like what would Jesus do, but the inverse.
Yeah.
Like how can you given a certain situation, how can you fuck it up so royally that you can like revel in your self-embarrassment later?
Yeah. Well, what would the narrator of this book do in the following situation?
Yeah.
We've got a warm up. We've got a funeral.
Okay, funeral.
So we're gonna suspect. Like, firstly, some of these situations would be completely unimaginable for the underground man because he has no fucking friends, but we're just gonna imagine that like we were transporting him into the situation.
He wouldn't be invited to the funeral in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And they're writing the invite, so like, that guy? No.
Oh, no. What would happen? He would, maybe he would meet someone by chance who in some way or another admitted that their relative had died recently, and he would find out when the funeral was happening, and he would go to the funeral and pretend that he was like some distant relative or friend of the person that had died.
Right. While being at the funeral, how would he? He wouldn't want to deliberately draw attention to himself and fuck it up. But he would run that scenario in his head a couple times.
Yeah.
And then, so is this funeral someone he hates? Probably, right?
I don't think he's gonna like them.
Yeah, chances are.
He's probably gonna devise some kind of rationale for how the person who died is above him, and even being dead, like the fact that they're having this funeral with so many people is a personal affront to him.
Yeah.
They've got like this beautiful bouquet of flowers for this fucking dead guy.
Yeah.
That would go through his mind, right?
That's exactly right. Okay, good one. Clear the funeral. Next scenario.
Next scenario. The birth of his child.
The birth of his child. Okay, again, would never happen because he can never have an actual relationship.
Okay, firstly, let's try and imagine a situation where he would, where he could manufacture this happening to himself, and then we could.
He didn't use a condom at the process. I mean, obviously at the time they didn't have condoms, I guess. But
yeah, sure.
He,
That could be one thing. He could, somehow position himself in the relationship of another couple. I don't know how he would do that. He could make a friend, a male friend who has a wife, and he could get very close to that person.
Right, he would seduce the wife on purpose.
Maybe not even seduce the wife, but like try and engineer a situation where he would make the man believe that he cheated on her.
Yeah.
Or seduce the wife.
Right, and like aim for a scenario where the wife or the man kills the child with jealousy, and then revealing that actually no, it
kills the child with jelly?
Out of jealousy.
Yes. Okay.
And then revealing later that actually no, was it your child?
That would be very low for him, but it's possible.
Pretty bad, yeah. Okay.
I think maybe what could be worse is he could, like, allow the child to be born, and the like truth of who the father is could be like always unclear.
Yeah. Leave it unclear on purpose, even though he knows.
But he could also like stick around, use that as an excuse to stay around and be really disruptive to the family for their whole life.
Yeah.
Their whole lives.
Okay, next one. What would ungrown man do?
Buying clothes from a shop.
Buying clothes. He's just out strolling buying clothes.
He's going to a shop and there's some like salespeople in the shop. There are some other customers.
Well, first of all, while the salesperson's talking to him, he would be like, Can't you see the holes in my coat? You know I can't afford this. You're looking down on me for even recommending this jacket to me. He's laughing at me.
Yeah. They probably would be laughing at him as well.
Yeah.
They would probably look down at him when he came through the door, and he would clock that. And he would come up with any justification to start any conversation on bad terms. What would he do? How many Maybe he would try on loads of clothes just to inconvenience them. Maybe.
Yeah. He would remove the tag. No, he's not that bold.
I know what he would do. He would go into the changing room. Say he like tries on a jacket or something. He would take all his like clothes from his torso off, and he would like rub his armpits like all over the inside of the jacket, so that when he gave it back, they wouldn't be able to tell. But the next person who tried the jacket on would like it would smell like shit.
Yeah,
he would probably do something like that. It would be like discreet ways of soiling the otherwise nice products of this shop.
Yeah,
without anyone really knowing about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Next one.
Riding a bike.
Okay. Riding a bike. What would Underground Man do? He would
fantasize maybe about like knocking into people. I don't know. Fantasize about like
meeting someone he knows and then running into them.
Or maybe like if there's someone cycling in front of them, like kind of catching up to them and like kicking their wheel or something. I don't know. How would he deal with traffic? I guess there were no cars in the 1860s, but you could imagine there being horse and carriages maybe.
He would...
I can imagine him being quite like... So I can imagine him being quite... Using animals, for example, like being kind of a bit psychopathic towards animals. I can imagine his wickedness would be not to necessarily like physically hurt people for the sake of hurting them, but I can imagine him leveraging people's sympathy of animals to make them feel bad. So like
in the bike scenario?
Maybe not the bike scenario. I was imagining him cycling past a horse and like giving it a poisoned apple or something. Or like having little swords, just like having a little sword.
He would if someone else, if there's a road where he knows there's a lot of cyclists, he would purposefully stand next to like a rain puddle, so that when they drive through it, and he gets splashed, he would, they ruined my coat, now I have to pay for the cleaning. And
True.
Can't they be more considerate?
They ruined the beaver collar which I lent from my friend, from my colleague.
Okay, next one. Last one?
Receiving a really nice gift unexpectedly. So let's imagine like he's at work or something and someone gives specifically him a nice present, I guess, right?
Yeah. Christmas, like Secret Santa. Like he put
some
shit gift in, or he didn't even submit a gift. Yeah,
I think he would submit something.
That's
because he would revel in like the anticipation of opening the gift and finding out that it's horrible.
Yeah.
Instead of not participating.
Yeah.
He would
buy a chocolate bar, unwrap it, eat the chocolate, put a wooden block inside, and wrap it.
I think something like, maybe even just something like kind of disgusting, like putting like loads of his hair in like a box or something. You know?
Little voodoo doll.
Yeah. But receiving the gift, so imagine that it was like something actually that he might really appreciate.
Yeah.
Like, could be something. It could be like, for example, his colleague lent him the beaver.
The nice pelt.
The nice beaver pelt. Maybe his colleague actually buys him a beaver pelt, like as a present. This could be Secret Santa, or this could be like something else.
Yeah.
What would his response be? Okay, like firstly, like the colleague approaching him and giving them the present, handing him this present. In his head, like, oh my god, I'm so embarrassed by.
They think they can't. I can't even afford a beaver pelt. Don't mock me.
Well, yeah, but he doesn't know what's in the present, right? But he's thinking like, look to what lengths they will go to try and disguise the fact that they're completely embarrassing me.
Yeah.
By giving me the veil of this present, which
Yeah.
is actually just charity because they feel sorry for me.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And I guess he opens and he sees the beaver pelt, and maybe he would probably totally think then that this is just charity, which it kind of would be actually, but and maybe he would say that he actually hates beaver.
And then he would fantasize about spilling wine on it to ruin it in front of everyone, but he doesn't have the courage to do it. And then he would leave the party, like awkwardly thank for the gift, and then on his way home, he would purposefully drop it in like a puddle.
Yeah.
And like, then he would hate himself for not being able to appreciate the gift.
Yeah.
Alright. Last one now? Okay.
We could do, why not? Being visited by your landlord. Okay.
For rent payment, or?
Let's say...
Did he like call in and complain?
That's a good question. No, I don't think he would have called and complained. But maybe the landlord is informing him that... Yeah, I'm going to try not to think about the outcome too much. The landlord is coming to inform him that they're going to do some maintenance on the pipes, so he can't use running water for one day the following week.
Yeah. Well, first of all, he would probably have some like plans, like he would meet his colleagues or something. So he would first of all lament the fact that he can't shower and that they did this deliberately to sabotage his social image.
Yeah.
Like they could have told me earlier, I would have shifted my plans. They probably told all the other tenants earlier, but they only told me a day before.
Yeah, and that's because I live on the first floor in the shabbiest apartment in the whole, shabbiest flat in the whole block. And my landlord hates me. What else? There's more here. There is more here.
I mean, how could you like embarrass yourself and then hate yourself for it in front of your landlord?
He would maybe try and kick up a fuss and say like, because of this slight against me, which is so clearly very personally targeted towards me specifically, I am withholding rent this month.
Yes. And then he could be like, I don't have the means to pay it. I can't afford it, but he would order his servant to bring in a really expensive bottle of wine while they're
yeah. A bottle of wine which he stole from somewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Alright, that was good. That was a good exercise, I think.
Fair enough, yeah. We've understood this character more deeply.
I think we have, yeah.
And we didn't end it on such a depressing note.
That's true.
I'm looking forward to discussing the second chapter of Zarathustra next session.
Next fortnight we'll have a much more uplifting, or at least more affirmative.
Aiming up.
We'll be reading the second part of Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the part which we were unable to finish last time because we're currently building our bridge to Übermensch.
Yeah, we weren't efficient enough.
It's a pretty tough one, but we're getting there.
Separate the wheat from the chaff.
We have a couple more readings lined up. We'll announce them now at the end of every episode. So if you want to read in advance, then you actually have the chance to this time.
Yeah.
And we will also, at some point, when we can be bothered, set up an email address so you can send us any readings that you would like us, any books you'd like us to
or just consume. Question, comments.
Yeah. If you have feedback,
the previous works, anything.
Let us know.
All right. See you next week or in next 2 weeks with Zarathustra.
Book boys.
Bye.
Boys. Book boys.